Okay, it's about time I did a year in review on Neptune's Lagoon and what we've been able to show here in the past year. Literally just out of screen here on the top, I have over 40, again, different articles and things that actually will show us another layer of an onion in a few different areas. And last time I got to over 40 on it, the thing crashed and I lost a lot of it. Just to be honest with you, I found at least half of those, maybe a third of them really were one of those things where it was showing you a piece that went with other things, but not so important, not really, the most important thing to show or something like that. So that's okay too, I guess. And we're getting back around to that. A lot of those I have forgotten about. Other ones I have not, and I've woven into other stories that are coming up. So not only are we kind of reviewing what went before, but what's coming up. For if you've been paying attention to lately, I'm on a roll. I've been actually very impressed with what I've been able to put out this past year. And a lot of it is not based on me. A lot of it's because that paper that I was talking about a couple of years ago just came out. And here's another thing, and here's another thing. Others were special things that showed you another layer to an onion and a gnostic belief and something that Masons and things like that don't get to learn till right towards the top if they ever reach it. And there's a lot more of that too. I've been able to show a lot of different things that make attachments, and that's kind of my motive. That's where I'm at. And it's weird to me, I look back whenever I look through these and I go, man, if I could do that in a more linear fashion, that would really be better, because you'd kind of have it on your mind and it would go and go and go. But I've also realized that whenever I do that to a point, people start not hearing me anymore almost. It seems to turn from good speech to murr, 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 as if my microphone didn't work bad enough as it was. And so I've realized that I can only get a certain amount of info in you about certain topics, and then I've got to pick something else. And quite often I feel like something else should be something totally different, like they say in Monty Python's Holy Grail. And now for something completely different. Does it still have attachments? Oh yeah. If you've been with me for a few years now and I talk about this web and how everything all connects and all these things more and more and more, and it gets built up on it. And it's kind of like when somebody does that string art with a bunch of nails and so on off of that, and it starts to build up things that look like a spirograph, if you know what I'm talking about. We talked about that whenever it went with sacred geometry, and believe it or not, I've got a whole nother layer of sacred geometry to be able to show you. And another one that hooks up with mathematics and things that we still use today. So there are some interesting topics coming up here, definitely. And I've been sitting here looking at all of them and going through them. And I don't know, it's just a weird thing. See if you can understand it. I know the topic. I went over it in my mind. I sat there once thinking it through, what I'd talk to you about and the connections I would show other than the article. Got a couple of pictures up and going. But now that I look back at it a few times, I end up almost thinking that I already did it. And in another way, I almost like go, yeah, well, I've got that set up. Let's see what else I can find, because I'm down this rabbit hole. So we end up doing this weird thing where we do jump around quite a bit. And I try to throw something in every once in a while that's just not really about that and different. Like maybe talk about some weird saltwater creature you may not have known even existed. Or my guitar collection, or I'll play a song for you or do something like that. Just to break up the monotony, because I feel like I'm just constantly on this. And it gets to the point to where I almost feel like I'm a lecturer about things and trying to tell you stuff. And that's really the reality of what ends up going on. But I'd almost rather be like we're all hanging around in a room talking about stuff. But if we did, I'd never get through my presentation because people start asking questions. And that's something that's missing from my site here. And I have thought about going live and doing things like that and being able to have a lot of conversation, because I can do like I did the recent video and put it up to where we have this, chat board over here on the right. But then again, what can you type? I've recently realized that typing just really sucks. Quite often it gives people to give a different idea of what you're saying or a misunderstanding, and then it goes from there. And whoa, what you might say, it's just things that if you were sitting there talking together and knew the voice inflection and what was going on, it'd be a totally different scene actually. And then the thing would have never happened either. So typing is something where as it's going along, I can throw something in as it's being said and add to it. And that feels pretty good, because I already feel like I keep, as I'm going through it, not doing it linear. I'm flopping off in left field and telling you all these different things that are trying to build your idea and your picture in your mind, what's going on, all these different things. But if I start hopping around too much, it gets out of hand and so on. But being able to add a little bit over here at the right, like, remember my video about da-da-da, because I talked about this then. In fact, I've got a lot of important videos that came out this past year. I really am, again, reveling in the idea that all this was able to be shown in that time constraint, along with all the other things I showed. A few of my videos here, if you've been with me the 5 years that we've been doing this, we went from the point of actually looking at the Sumerian connection to ancient Egypt, and here's a sun disk with wings on it and things like that, and here's these cylinder seals that they had at the very first, here's the way they build at the first and things like that. And I had to sit and make all the things and show it all around, and it was quite a thing, and I had all these tabs pulled up to make it happen. And strangely, a year and a half ago, now Wiki's got a whole article on it, and it's huge. And it talks about all the connections that they've realized so far. And that's fantastic that they've been able to do that. I feel like even now that they've redone it one more time and added a few things, that I should probably go over the whole thing again. But I kind of already went over it. And I went over it before anybody was talking about it, really. Well, they all knew it. And this is stuff I'm showing you that generally has come out in one way or another. But then you have people that are Egyptologists and so on that go, and it's like, wow. It's weird sometimes in these fields, people that are in the field and all in the Kool-Aid don't even know the flavor. I guess a little example came to mind right when I said it there was Zahi Hawass, who was unaware of Gobekli Tepe or anything like that. And when Graham tried to talk to him about it and say, here's the stonework things, and then there's hooks up to Natufian people. Now we know the Natufians went in Egypt, and here's something that you can add to your, isn't it wonderful? And he got mad, didn't want to talk to him or anything. And I don't know Gobekli Tepe, and stuff. It was hilariously sad to watch go on, but it actually was something revealing where people want to make up this idea, almost it still goes with the Bible, that like popcorn things happen in a certain way. And that's literally what I've been showing you the last few years here on the side. And one section of what I show you is like, here's all these archaeological sites with all these things going on that connect to the things that we know of, where we said it went like popcorn. So it's not really necessarily like popcorn. Like I guess example comes to mind is concrete and terrazzo floors going all the way back, and there they are at Gobekli Tepe. And it looks like they know what the hell they're doing. Like somebody laying out concrete in a modern day, like they know what they're doing. It doesn't seem to be like the first thing they ever made up. And people were literally having to grind limestone and make up this, grit that goes with it, make a mixture and everything, certain amount of water, get it all laid out there and let it dry up and turn into concrete, so on. So there was a whole lot of people who were apparently grinding this dust and making it up and stuff too. It's just remarkable. One thing I've been able to show is that bottom left-hand picture. It's a video that I had just had come out where I got a little overexcited and put something out, and I didn't even grab all the papers and try to look at it from that point of view. I was pretty much just wanting to show you, here it is, here, you know, if you walk into a cave and you see these things and there's these blotches, and nobody's ever said anything about the blotches, and well, there have been other people and stuff goes on, but then everybody wants to take anybody that goes to, with any thoughts to there and try to lump them in a box like I've got way over there that I keep out of my studies too, about aliens and all this, you know, all of a sudden you want to throw it to that. That's not really what it is. It's that these people actually had a way of knowing whenever they usually foal their calves and so on like that. And not that they would attack then, but they knew not to attack the parents, it seems, before the point going into it. And you don't take out females during this season, or we're not going to have very many deer again. Like they knew this, like it went from way back before 20 to 40,000 years that we're talking about, where they already had this out. A lot of that ends up being just stretching out your mind and trying to think of what it could be, what it could be. But when you have an art and a thing like that, it can be attached much better. You can look at a crime scene, if you will, and try to figure it out from there, and it won't give you very much. But then other things might give you something. You find a business card, maybe it means something. Or you find these blotches on the wall, and it really does mean something. In fact, there's a correlation. And how long does a horse gestate? Well, that seems to go in with it. To hold on here. And they went through it and figured it out. It's a huge, huge leap in our understanding of what was going on and the mentality of these people at this age. And a lot of people have said, "Yo, man, they had the mind of us and everything and all." That's a misconstraint too, because nowadays through school we're studying all these things. Sumerians were studying all these things, but not what we're studying and into something else. Which does connect and everything, but you got to imagine school then, huh? Well, you can imagine school back at this time too and how it was different. So it's not actually a direct thing where you think it is. And that's part of the mist of it, is trying to say, well, what was their understanding at that time and putting it together? And they had minds like ours, and had they been thrown into a city that was all built up, like teleported through time, they could have caught in fairly well. It's a lot more different than we would think of in a lot of the caveman shows, but then again, a lot of the shows where they unthought a caveman or anything like that, he catches in real quick and becomes the life of the party. Could easily happen. So in the review here, I guess I just want to point out a few ones that are real important here with all of these connections that I've been showing you. Again, Mohenjo-Daro, and we go with that in the Indus Valley situation and what its end was and stuff. And now that we've peered back through all of these sites, we find that once they cleared out Mohenjo-Daro all the way, it's covered with a melt glass, and it's exactly like the nuclear glass that was formed in Nevada when we were doing tests. Literally to the point that if you're walking around looking at the glass, they'd be like, "So you're in Nevada," or you know, it gets the point to that. And it shows you where that civilization went to and what happened, and what actually is in the Mahabharata about these great weapons and all this stuff. And of course we talked about how Indra and others are described as blonde people in there and so on. I just watched a recent video and I thought, man, I could make one out of this, but it would take 4 45-minute videos. And you know as well as I do, whenever I make that guesstimation, I don't shut up and it becomes 6. But it's a girl from India, totally laying it out there, telling you what happened. There's some ambiguous moments in it that she has, and a whole aspect of it that she doesn't, you know, even go into and stuff. And I felt like, man, I could just envelope this, make it a little bit thicker. I could thicken up that soup real quick. But man, what an endeavor to have to go through and then probably just get flagged. One thing y'all don't know is I make videos all the time. They'll have something in it, and they'll have a video clip or have this, that, and the other, and I just wonder if it's going to make it through or not. And after making a 45-minute video and uploading it, it goes flagged. And I have to make another one about it. Sometimes you'll hear me tell you that I made the second attempt on this or whatever. What's that? That might have been those situations. Do I sound frustrated? Okay, that's what it was. And I've realized that if you zoom out on things and stuff like that, a lot of them get by, and so on. And if your mic isn't that great, they won't pick it up true to form, and you'll get by with some things like that. Other things they're so on top of, I can't get 6 seconds in. I used to make the comment that looks like 10, but I took just one little bitty piece that was about 6.5 seconds, and it flagged. And then because I was talking into it before, I actually had to cut that whole chunk out of the video and then re-put it through, and then, copy it, put it back through. And then they went, oh, okay, you're not flagged now. Where did the thing go where you said the thing we don't want you to say? Whatever, which is also a problem too. I feel like I have to dance around somewhat, but y'all know me too. I don't turn around and I don't dance much. If we're going to dance, that's supposed to be getting towards something else, and so we might as well get to the effing. Although I do talk a lot, and let's call that foreplay. Ha ha ha. Okay, enough about that idea. So I've shown a lot of things real recently that show connections and stuff. One real important was Thomas Sowell and roots and reality. Now, if you've been with me this whole time, I did do one way back whenever I had Afrocentrics infiltrate me and started talking crap about all my Egyptian videos and the connections that I was making with who was what and where and blue-eyed people and da-da-da. And sure, it leads towards a Hitler thing and this, that, and the other, da-da-da. You know where he got it all from was archaeology. Do you think German archaeologists are dumb? It's the problem that we have today where what he did with it and then the way we look at it and all this other stuff that comes back. And it's amazing how many times people try to throw that as the worst thing in the world that ever happened. And of course, the World War, that's got to be something. One thing that almost gets me whenever I think about it too is that Germany, little Germany right there, just turned around and tried to say, fuck it and take on the whole world. And you'd think, oh, well, how'd that go? And it's like, well, it was pretty close. In fact, we find stuff that they had going on that they were working on that we ended up taking over and stuff, basically. And, man. But let's look at different things that I had here. I've done different showings here recently. Egyptian god Bes, the dwarf god here, and how there's an island called Ibiza, you may have heard of, and their major temple on that, made by the Phoenicians whenever they were going around doing all those things. That would be the ancient Canaanites and the connections, and how they had a temple with Bes in it and had totally adopted it. Our Joe and me and Christmas on Santa and mushrooms and reindeers and rooftops. And if you were with me this whole year, you remember whenever they had a special event on a video game that I play with Dungeons and Dragons in it, which is all encompassed in all the mythologies. So I can use it as a teaching tool quite often, and I've shown you things where just in this video game, you're like, well, if you just take any of it that they know of and try to throw it in there correctly, here it is. It's just like one of the other videos, pretty much. It's amazing. They've got civilizations there. There are the mammoth huts and all of those other things, like in the very first video we were talking about, and connections to it. But I also in that went to a thing and they had these red cap people and they're dwarfs and they're little bitty and they call quicklings and they have problems dealing with everybody. And there's red cap mushrooms, and those are those mushrooms that make everybody what has that got to do with it? Oh, it's got a lot to do with it. And you think no, but it does. And you think of modern day, how we have pot and things like that is now finally turning back around into legal and stuff like that, and how much it has a connection to it. But you could almost say, well, how much did drinking and alcohol have to do with any of this? And then you go, oh, wow, that's a lot too. Here they are making beers. This thing right here holds 600 gallons, and they checked the residue, and they were making large quantities of beer here. constantly working through it. Well, you'd say 600 gallons. That's a whole lot. I mean, gosh, how many kegs is that? But then you have 20,000 people, and really the water that you use goes bad or so on. And what you do is you make it into a beer and weaken it with water, and the water is purified by the alcohol effect, and so it's kind of weakened down beer. And believe it or not, even kids were drinking it and stuff back in the day. It was like, well, am I going to give my kids something by giving them bad water, or going to give them good water? Well, we have good water. So it was a normal thing. It was a real normal thing. A lot of things were normal way back when. There's the meme winner here in the competition, and quite often memes, of course, you find one picture and then you say something that's not even dealing with it, but ha ha ha. But this one that won it was actually the fact that churches in sub-Saharan Africa, this one entitled here, this guy thinks that he farts the Holy Ghost and he sits on people's head to heal them and stuff. So church is a little different with black people, but let's move on. One of the more important ones I feel like I put out, and I guess it's because I have so much attachments to Christmas and this idea and everything. It was the thing growing up, and stuff. And all holidays I was well into, and of course you can see with all my mythological connection videos how that works with each other. But in this Gnostic Christmas right here, what we basically looked at was, they only got 4 Gospels. Well, there's supposed to be 12. We've talked about all that. Well, what are these other ones that are written? And this was all Gnostic. They just chose these and then went off of that, leaving out the other ideas. But what are the other ideas? Well, and the idea we look at here, Jesus was born in a cave. And I've heard people say something about that. And you're like, here's where they get it from and why it grew so much. And people knew this. In fact, you can find stained glass in churches that show you that, I'll be damned, they knew this all the way through the Renaissance time and stuff like too. They're, right there. I showed them to you and stuff, and these ideas of stuff that's said in this gospel. It's not said in anything else, and they're showing it outright. But lo and behold, there's a dragon there too. Well, yeah, we are all hooked up. I've gone deep into dragons a few times and got to that point I need to stop for now before you start thinking that the world was made from dragons. Oh wait, the Sumerians say that. Tiamat's body and the whole 9 yards, wow. Oh, well, that was those guys and that was pagan. No, it's in your Bible, and Jesus quells dragons and all kinds of things happens off of this. And in the Old Testament, in fact, looking at the idea of what that was. And then I showed you another flip of that whole manger scene, which we're looking at here versus over there. And lo and behold, that manger scene is found written in the stars. And by using the Sumerian language and the way they have multiple words attached to parts of linguistics, it's well known, you can just take those names that they have for that and connections and puns and come up with a whole story. And this story and that story. I made a whole series in it this year, and believe it or not, even though it's thick and much bigger than I even alluded to, I felt like I got to the point where that's about enough of that, or y'all going to start freaking out that, again, it's all because of written in the stars. It's one reason I kept that onion away, that layer of the onion, if you will, away for so long, and only alluded to it once or twice. I showed a one piece where there's this thing, here it is, written in the stars, and did one in the Sumerians. And I alluded to the idea that a lot of these tales are written in the stars. And with this, I was able to turn around and show you the Greeks are doing it too, but they stole the idea from the Sumerians. There's so many connections there that nobody gives connection to at all. They try to say, well, they came into Egypt, did this, that, and the other. Well, did they learn it from the Library of Alexandria that had all the Sumerian stuff and copies in it too? Or did they learn it directly? Or both? And it's weird how Sumeria and that idea is definitely always in the shadow over there to the left, and over there, well, if you look at the Fertile Crescent, over there to the right. But then there's connections past that. Most people in their minds don't even have the idea that there's a whole section as big as we've been looking at between there and India and stuff, and where were people living in. Ah, so in a lot of my videos, I've made connections on doing that. Played a Peanut song that I'm trying to work up or whatever. It was, oh, I don't know. I thought that was okay, I guess. Pretty cool. Fingers starting to work a little bit better or something. I don't know if it'll ever get to the point where I would really want for it to, but it's a therapy. It's got me back on it again and again. I'm playing guitar, some things that I haven't done for years because of my marriage and things like that. But with a lot of these videos here that we've gone through, we've shown so much. America was known before Columbus. All the dogs of South America actually come from Viking type people. And now this is a real verifier that it all happened. And you can pretend that they let it off way up in Iceland type of lands and Nova Scotia, and those dogs made it all the way down. But they have already realized that that's not how that went, and it couldn't be in place like this if that was in place. And the North American dogs that were wild aren't making as much, but there's a connection there too. There's another video. We talked about the Christmas story of Catalhoyuk and how that is coming down the chimney and situations like that, and how that hooks up with an idea of mushrooms too. So there's a lot of connections like that. In fact, there's a whole nother one about that too, and a whole nother layer of an onion, if you will. And I'll just do it next year, Christmas, as we come into it, and make another one, along with 2 or 3 or 4, who knows, more times I do that. Yeah, I did this one where I start out, but then I do a sad version or slow blues variant of All I Want for Christmas from Mariah Carey here, but showed one of Arctic Anomalies. One of the most important series I think I put out, if not in the whole thing that I've done, if not just inside this year, if you will, was this connection of the next 4 videos here showing you that a dragon is in the Bible. And even though it's been rewritten and pulled out of it, it's still thick in there, and the ideas and everything that went along with it, with this dragon god. And it's a 6-parter. Pretty neat. Using somebody else's video pieces to go into it and everything, but I'm definitely not saying what he says. I just use it as guidelines to keep flipping off down other rabbit holes. I showed my Eddie Van Halen guitar that I have there, and played a couple of songs from old Eddie Van Halen and stuff there. There it is. But I also showed a little series that I felt like I just did not even perform well in any way, shape, or form, and I knew it as I was doing it and couldn't do it any better. I felt it's just, I'd have to turn around and stop and concentrate onto this for weeks and turn around and make it into something else, and it really deserves that. But the archaic rituals and lifestyles that brought about religions, I think is a top 10 of this year, perhaps in a series situation. But because I left it so weak, I don't think that it really pops up during there. But it is much more important than people give credit to. I did a little James Bond song, something that we worked up in a band and stuff back in late 1980s. And just as something to do to the side, once we started playing gigs and keg parties and stuff like that, instead of a gig that's going to be you're able to play for 45 minutes to an hour or whatever, usually at a keg party you set up for it, you might play for a while and then quit and then play for a while and things like that, and end up the party and get out of there. And by doing so, you've got to have a lot more songs and things like that. So we worked up a whole lot of other people's songs and stuff like that in groups. Hey, you want to hear something from Ozzy? And we'd play it and stuff. And hey, you know that new song just hit the radio by the Scorpions? Here it is. So did things like that. Of course, things like that were usually in the main set, but we had to break it up somewhat. But anyhow, I show an Egyptian mummy market. I actually was a guest on Chief X's channel. It's a guy that I have a lot of respect for, what he's trying to do and to black people, to show the reality versus all of these lies that they have that are jealous and envy and causing them to act and react upon things that never even happened. And it's really terrible that it's happened that way. And if you look at it, they act like you can't, if you're white or anything else, you can't critique it at all. So it really has to go through black people wanting to do it. And that's a problem too, because they rather believe a lie, all of those things. In fact, I have another set where one time I got on and I did that video about it and tried to envelope there because I really didn't get a good shake of a stick. I got to say a few things. It got taken in a different way. You could tell right then he didn't want to talk about asselar man and all the things that went along with that, but go with this Egyptian thing and just destroy it. So I'm like, all right, yeah, Himwenu, all this other stuff. And I'm like, okay, now let's look at Khufu's granddaughter. I mean, people say, well, you know, all those blondes that we just showed are going to be around this time. So that's after somebody came in. So before that, they were black or silly stuff. So let's look at Ginger, the pre-dynastic mummy, and let's look at these things. And oh, by the way, all those statues with the blue eyes were all during the pyramid building stage right there. So it's showing you the truth. And then I was going to be able to, or try to talk about how red ochre symbology works out. But instead, a nature boy guy came on who wanted to do a kumbaya about mushrooms and stuff. And believe me, with y'all knowing my other stuff, if I didn't want and didn't feel like, oh, here's my final chance and I'm putting things together, reading an alphabet, and I got to LMNOP and this guy interrupts, or before then, actually, in the amount of things I could show. And next thing you know is Buddha's all this, Buddha's all that, and that guy that came on who calls himself Information Man, which really should be Misinformation Man, because even there he was like, well, who can we claim, Chief? It's terrible, you know. And he turned around and acted like, oh, I didn't do that. You know, you just claimed that Buddha was black and that these depictions are black, and those are snails stuck on his head, and it all has to do with sacred geometry and stuff that you don't even understand or want to get into, but you want to claim it. Which is desperate problems. Really it is. I mean, it's sad. But so I did another video on something that connects from 28 to 10,000 years ago, all on blue-eyed people and where they came from. And oh, there's a word called Aryans. Now we call it Proto-Indo-Europeans because people don't like the fact of you using that because of the way it was done in World War II. Listen, World War II is in 1940. We're talking about things that are thousands and thousands of years old, leading all into it. That shows you that those archaeologists that were hooked up with Germany were onto something, and there is something to it all. There is definitely something to it all. It's just what he did with it that made the world all go weird, and I don't even want to get into that. I did a one on Halloween when we got back. There's my wife and a get-up that I made for her and her little picture there, but I did a vid on Halloween memories, and you know, I again got into this wholeheartedly. During Christmas, I had things laid out all too. The house was all double trimmed and up under the overhang too. I ended up getting icicles and this, that, and the other. The bush was all covered. The walkway had lights going down it. It had a streamer of ring lights going around it. We had 3 Christmas trees in the yard planted that were set up like Christmas trees, like it would be in your house, all kinds of things. Of course, bad weather hit and it kind of ruined things a little bit. But we had a couple of sets of ornaments and things like that. They were just the regular gold and green and da-da-da. And I had a bunch of special ones that we had saved that my dad got from Germany from way back when. They were all hand painted and so on. But those are gone now. Never mind. Anyhow, I talk about Halloween and how it all connects with things too. Right after I ended up getting my guitars, trying to fix with my finger and work it out, do things here, I ended up taking one guitar and making a few songs out of it, like ZZ Top and Immigrant Song and so on, and took the other one that I have, it's got the whammy bar on it, and played Pink Floyd and everything. And really, I'm just going to try to revisit that in about 1.5 years and turn around and go, you play them back to back, and you can just tell how much I've been able to change from that amount of time and things like that too. But that's really more for a me thing, but I'm sharing it too, and I'm making videos, whatever. Then we show weird things like Democrats said that if the Democrats could do this and that they could stop hurricanes and all this. But then we look at the hurricane data and like hurricanes are weaker than they have been. If you take out that one bad one and everything, wow, we've done real good here in this past decade, but they with that climate change thing. They want you to believe all these other things are going on. The world's about to blow up, and in 8 years from now, it's going to be past the point of no return and everything. And you go, well, let me look at that dock mark that I've got out there. It has raised none during all the time that you're saying it now. In fact, actually, we've had cold spells and things that just, it's terrible what people try to push. It really is. So then I end up showing you a series of astrotheological roots of religions and everything in there, and that was a real good one. It was a good 4-parter. Play a couple more guitar songs, and that's it for the guitar before then, because I didn't have it for them. But I show you fairy tales and how old it goes back, and you hear that tale as old as time. And how long does it go back? Well, wow. I don't usually do things about even into the Middle Ages, much less much past it, because it gets personal and things like that. But I have made a few videos about it, how like the Dims came out and they told you that's why God gave you 2 arms, is to get double shots, things like that. We did a series on a talking donkey god. We did a series on peopling of Africa and how Soy Kita comes out as a response to some black guy that's there asking, when did people that look like Elizabeth Taylor, you know what I'm saying, come into Egypt? And he goes, oh, they've always been there, at least 60,000 years. Well, actually, always. It never worked out like who knows what you're thinking, but it didn't work that way. Here's a couple of those written in the stars, and I feel like I could have done those better too. Really, you know, I'll almost get a suspenseful music in the background and go, nah, 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 you know. But it's better if I just turn around and go, check this out. And you can walk out your door right now and see this. You can see Jesus walking on water. You can see it right now, just like they saw it whenever they wrote it down in the first place. It's amazing. I did a few debunks here and there and everything, and I did one on Mr. Imhotep, who is a guy that keeps putting out these shorts like crazy, and he keeps showing information, half of it at least is correct, and then all of a sudden he puts Bantu people in the picture and he goes, see? And it's like, nope, no, yeah, and anybody with any brain can see it just as easy as anybody that you're trying to make a connection that doesn't exist. And all archaeology knows it doesn't exist, and you still can't quit. I did a series on the Greek hand in the Bible, again, that is extremely important. I took on the myth of the fact that we're 1% different from a chimp, like 99%, 92% the same as a banana, whenever at least these Bantu people have up to 19% of an unknown ghost hominid nobody else have a piece of in humanity. Therefore, by their statements here, which have always been bullshit, we're closer to a banana than we are to black people. What? Well, that's what you say when you start giving percentages and saying these stupid things, but then we look into the reality of it. But there's that Hidden in the Stars series. I show God. I show my namesake Neptune. I show Inky. I show, well, oh, they're all the same people. It's all from the same deal. There's Jesus walking on water. Here's the Argos and Jason and the Argonauts and the Golden Fleece. No, wait, that's the Ark of the Bible. And here's that and that. And it comes up right between the rivers there and so and so. And yeah, that goes right along with it. It's amazing. That on itself would just be like, bam. But I have all this other stuff that really has different bams going on to it too, because I encompass it with the idea of the Greek hand in the Bible. And I've shown you how the Greeks actually adopted most Sumerian tales and put them into, like Adonis, and I was hooked up to Dumuzi and things like that. An esoteric Genesis. I re-put out Debunked African Queen and a few other debunks that are on here too, but that's not really what it's all about. I talked about the oldest known pottery, because when we look at Gobekli Tepe, those people didn't have clay pottery. They were making all of their stoneware out of stone, and that's incredible. It is just like in Egypt in its first dynasties, they had these people that were making this stoneware and stuff, and it fades off from there, and they put 40,000 pieces of it, and it's incredible, but it shows you a connection. And I've shown other Natufan videos in the past years, layer of an onion, where those connections end up being making, and they're making those same stone bows too. So it's like, ha ha ha, here it all goes together in Gobekli Tepe. And we're able to stretch back 10,000 years now, as opposed to looking at 3,500 BC as somehow people came out like popcorn and some god came down and spoke a word and made all this happen. Indo-European influence on China. Greek hand in the Bible, another with Dumuzi and Adonis that I just talked about there. Osiris and its connections to what we know of today, and so on, and ideas and religious connections and stuff, comparative mythology, things like that. A Sumerian tale of Adam and Eve. What the Bat Creek stone shows us, and of course that shows us one of those connections to where those Vikings were coming around. There was a lot more going on than anybody wants to lead to, and there's more people than just the Vikings. But the Greek hand in the Bible, there's 3 sets right there, 2 more, 1 there, 1 there. I think there's 8 of them all together to show it, and I want to let you know that's just some highlights of the fireworks show, and if you want to look at it, it's all over it like crazy. There's a picture of my engine and my Dodge and stuff, and I love the car. It's a nice car and everything, but that's one of my side video situations too. Myths in the Bible, creation and Enuma Elish, how they connect up. Not only is there a Greek in the Bible, but there's Pagan Jesus and how that all works out. Myths in the Bible of Moses in a basket, things like that. The anointing of Odysseus and how it's exactly the same as the Bible story that supposedly happens to Jesus. Isn't that weird? Isn't this weird? Oh, there's a whole thing where Josephus telling about Titus and his campaign goes directly with the New Testament, and certain things are pointed out in there, and there's puns on words and all kinds of crazy things. I showed another video game that I worked on with another guy here, and we built an incredible place that's gone now. But that was pretty neat too. Dolmens, where they are, ancient India, what is that kind of connection to it? Well, if you know about those Aryans, there's connections all the way going through it. In fact, Tower of Babel, revisited, could do it again, still have another layer, by the way. But Neverwinter D&D event, mushrooms and mythology, that's where I went into that. How Io is worked into the idea of a cattle myth of the Black Sea and Egypt and Hathor's origins, if you saw it. The fact that the Hopewell people were devastated by an air burst that went over them, just like a lot of other places had, in the Younger Dryas event and all of those situations. How perhaps the Edfu text tells something about the Atlantis story. Recreations of Egyptians, what Alpha and Omega is all about. The story of Abraxas and a chicken-headed, stake-legged archon god of a cockatrice, which has to do with dragons and the phoenix and all kinds of connections from a time back when. Divine twins, and believe me, that plays in a lot more than people would give credit for. Mythology and movies I've done. And now we start to get back past the end of the year here that I did, because there's the White Christmas and a Dickens tale that I went on, Solar Boat of Abu Rawash, and connections of Jesus and Osiris. And if we go a little bit back before then, I've done ones on movies and so on, and here we are with Last Christmas with Krampus and so on. And hopefully y'all have held with me through that. I'm just sitting here babbling, and if you've been watching all my videos, you've been seeing all this and connections, but I'm telling you now, there are more. And again, at the very top right there, right above everything, see if I can do this real quick. You see all those little red arrows? All those are hooked up to different videos. Now, some of them I use 3 or 4 of them in a video. You see where I change, and I use pictures, and I use this, that, and the other. And so they're connected somewhat. Other ones I do a whole video off of that, and I might have a connective piece over here or over there. So how many are there? I don't know. There's like 70 something, but then some of them are guitar backing tracks and things that I've got for playing guitar and doing things like that. And so there's a lot of them. And I really need to start getting through these. But as you notice, every time I do this, it keeps growing because I keep looking for answers and puzzle pieces. And sometimes that shows me 1, 2 videos worth of stuff, 3 before I've ever gotten out 1, and it keeps growing. I need to like selectively put out videos daily if not more, and put them all out in a group, which I usually do whenever I have a series. But in doing so, I know the algorithm chokes you. In fact, I've realized that if I wait 2 days between videos, I get a lot more response than I do if I put them out daily. It ends up being where they treat me like I'm one of those daily blogger situations, and then because I've already got a shadow ban on me, I don't even get to show up in that category, so that kind of sucks it. And I could go with just the important videos and not make any connections or any strings on our board, if you will, but that's not what we're trying to do here. We're trying to figure out how it all worked and went together. Where I was at the bottom there and hitting last Christmas, you remember there was the 7,000 videos, 7,000 subscribers. And I appreciate each and every one of you, and I really like it whenever you have conversation with me or ask me questions down there in the bottom, things like that. But I went from 7,000 to 8,000 real quick, and I don't know what's happened, if Elon Musk doing this, that, and the other made them scared and they turned off one thing, but in doing so, I've almost got 40% of the way up to 9, and I haven't even really done my 8,000 video yet, because this is kind of the year in review, and the other one would be 8,000 videos, and that's usually in a what's to come peekaboo situation. But I think we'll cover it all in one in doing these and not waste too many of my videos in it. But I'm right at 8,400 subscribers, and it's growing again a little bit faster. And I realize that a few of these videos get a lot more views on them, and certain ones have been pegged out and sent, and somebody tagged it someplace, and then a few thousand people got to watch the video all of a sudden that never got to watch it. And this video's got 14,000 views on it. This one's got 23. So if I just did videos about that, that's not me, man. I could do some more videos about those concepts and how it hooks all together. I don't think they'd get the views. I'm not trying to get 1 million views. I'm trying to get some information out there. They're choking the hell out of me, but I'm still doing it. And hopefully one day it'll reach somebody that really needs it, which I think in humanity is just about everybody. Seriously. To learn this stuff. Oh, I'm showing you everything. I'm the great teacher. No. I'm showing you these great teachers' stuff. Stuff that I've found out and compiling. I look at myself as a researcher. Sure, I know a lot of stuff. Got a decent IQ. Blah, 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 blah. No. Look at what I found out. Look at what these guys that are real smart found out. Look at these connections that connect these things that all these smart people found out. It's really on that line. You'll find I don't really try to pimp myself too much on these ideas, but you need to every once in a while to let people know that I think I have a good idea of what the hell's going on here. It's a confidence thing though too. Anyhow, guys, the veil is lifting more and more and more. And while you see people trapped in the veil all the time on it, by watching my videos, I believe that it makes it to where you can see right through the fog. After a while, you have fog lights built in. After a while, you get heat-seeking sensors and things like that, and next thing you know, you're able to peer through a bunch of bullshit that you wouldn't have been able to before. What we're really concentrating, instead of the bullshit that's happening nowadays, which I do touch upon some, is what happened in ancient time to make it all to where we're at now. I think that's the most important thing a human could learn, is the reality and truth of how this all really happened. Versus a book that tells you some magic words, and he made a golem spell out of somebody out of mud, and then a woman grew from a rib and ate from a magic tree because a talking, walking snake told her to, which is a dragon. And then God took away the dragon's feet. It didn't say he took away his wings, so this guy apparently didn't have wings. But you look at the depictions, people keep showing you this half man dragon snake teeth people. And it's the story of a snake lost his legs. Some of these things are simple, some of these things are woven in deeply, and that's the reason I think the book's so incredible, by the way, is that all of this has been able to put into one, and it had people for 2,000 years caught up in a bunch of BS, and they're just so certain that this happened, and it's like, that's a bullshit story based on this other one. So if you're going to tell me that pagan thing really happened, and it was so strong it made you claim it, it gets deep. Some people don't like getting deep. Some people like to scuba dive. I'm gonna let you go now, man. We're gonna go get on into some of these other videos here on the top of it here, but I appreciate you. Welcome to 2023, where we hope it's a brave new world, and no, not like the one in the book of Brave New World is, but actually reality. And we quit this BS. I have a feeling, though, that like a bad fart, it's going to keep lingering for a while, huh? Peace.